Have you ever noticed how some of the boldest decisions in history, hailed as visionary at the time, ended up as devastating mistakes that shaped the fate of nations? Beyond the headlines and beyond the propaganda lie stories of leaders who gambled everything on a single move, only to see it collapse in ruin. Let's go back to the ancient world, where legend and reality intertwine with the Trojan War. After 10 long years of siege, the Greeks appeared to abandon their campaign, leaving behind a massive wooden horse as a supposed gift of surrender. The Trojans, weary from years of conflict, blinded by arrogance and lulled into a false sense of triumph, dragged the horse into their fortified city. That single decision sealed their fate. Hidden inside were Greek soldiers who, under the cover of night, poured out, opened the gates, and unleashed destruction. By dawn, Troy, a city once thought indestructible, was in flames. It was not brute strength, but misplaced confidence that doomed them. Centuries later, during the height of European empires, the Spanish Armada of 1588 became one of the greatest gambles in naval history. King Philip II of Spain, driven by a mix of religious zeal and imperial ambition, believed a fleet of more than 130 heavily armed ships would sweep away England's smaller navy. But the gamble misjudged nearly everything: the weather, the logistics, and the resilience of the English. The invincible Armada was battered not only by England's faster, more maneuverable ships, but by ferocious storms that scattered the fleet across the North Sea. By the time survivors limped home, Spain's aura of supremacy was shattered, and England rose as a new maritime power, proving that even the greatest empires can miscalculate their strength. Fast forward to the 20th century, and a new superpower made its own colossal error: America's involvement in Vietnam. What began as a limited intervention, justified under the domino theory that communism had to be stopped in Southeast Asia, spiraled into one of the longest and most brutal wars of the century. U.S. leaders underestimated not only the resilience of the Viet Cong, but the unforgiving terrain of jungles and villages where conventional power meant little. Year after year, the United States poured in troops, resources, and firepower, believing overwhelming force would ensure victory. Instead, television brought the horrors of war into living rooms, protests erupted across the nation, and faith in government collapsed. The war claimed over 58,000 American lives, countless Vietnamese casualties, and ended not with triumph, but with desperate helicopters airlifting the last personnel from Saigon in 1975. A searing image of geopolitical failure. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Cold War, the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 mirrored the same arrogance. The Kremlin assumed it would be a swift operation to stabilize a neighbor and install a friendly government. Instead, they walked into a trap of mountainous terrain, tribal rivalries, and a resistance fueled by outside support. Guerrilla fighters, known as the Mujahideen, turned the Soviet occupation into a quagmire. For 10 long years, Moscow bled resources, morale, and international credibility. The war killed over 15,000 Soviet soldiers, crippled the economy, and left a nation scarred. Many historians argue that this gamble didn't just fail, it hastened the collapse of the Soviet Union itself, proving that even superpowers can be broken by misjudging a small country's will to resist. And then there is a more recent chapter that still casts a long shadow: the 2003 U.S.-led invasion of Iraq. announced as a bold mission to eliminate weapons of mass destruction and to reshape the Middle East with democracy. The gamble had near universal attention. At first, Baghdad fell quickly, and leaders declared mission accomplished. But the triumph was an illusion. No stockpiles of WMDs were ever found. Instead, a violent insurgency erupted. Sectarian conflicts tore the country apart, and terrorist networks gained new ground. What was meant to secure global stability instead destabilized an entire region, leaving behind power vacuums and chaos that ripple across the world even today. Each of these episodes, the fall of Troy, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, America in Vietnam, the Soviets in Afghanistan, and the Iraq War, reveals the same chilling pattern. When leaders mistake ambition for destiny, when they gamble on power without reckoning with reality, history answers with brutal lessons. These were not mere errors of strategy. They were failures of hubris, of leaders blinded by ideology, pride, or misplaced certainty. They gambled everything, lost more than they imagined, and shifted the balance of power for generations. Beyond the headlines, these backfires remind us that the line between triumph and disaster in geopolitics is razor thin, and when that gamble fails, the consequences echo for years.